We begin with breaking news. An Australian teenager has died in hospital after drinking a methanol-laced drink on holidays in Laos. Bianca Jones had been travelling with her friend, Holly Bowles, when they consumed the spiked beverages. The 19-year-old's family confirmed her passing in a statement this afternoon. Holly Bowles remains on life support in Bangkok. The nation's leaders reacting to this afternoon's tragic development.
Our first thoughts in this moment are with her family and friends who are grieving a terrible and cruel loss. This is every parent's very worst fear and a nightmare that no one should have to endure. All Australians offer them our deepest sympathy in this time of heartbreak.
On behalf of the Coalition, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the family and the friends of this beautiful young girl. The story has been shocking from the moment it was reported. Up to 10 young people who had been the subject of this terrible incident, some who have lost their lives, and as we point out, one young Australian who is still on the life support.
I want to start by offering my personal and all of our heartfelt sympathies to Bianca's family. And Holly's family remain in our thoughts at this incredibly difficult time. Drink spiking and methanol poisoning are far too common in too many parts of the world. So at this time, I would say to parents, to young people, please have a conversation about risks. Please inform yourselves. Please let's work together to ensure this tragedy doesn't happen again.
US authorities have confirmed the death of an American in an apparent drink poisoning incident in Laos. North America correspondent Barbara Miller joins us now from Washington. Barbara, what can you tell us about this case?
Well, the State Department here has confirmed that an American national has died. They said that the person died in Van Vieng, Laos. Now, that is the site of this apparent mass alcohol tainting incident. We know that 2 Danish nationals have also died. They're reported to be 2 young women in their 20s. And we also know, of course, that 2 Melbourne teenagers, Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones, are fighting for their lives at 2 separate Thai hospitals after falling ill on a night out in Van Vieng, Laos, and then being transferred to Thailand for care there. We've had some very brief details from the State Department, but it does appear that the American citizen was not transferred, that they died in Laos. The US authorities saying that they were closely monitoring the situation and providing consular assistance. They refer inquiries about the investigation into the cause of death to the local authorities in Laos. Now, the Australian government warning travellers about the possibility of drinks being laced with methanol, a method used to try and reduce production costs in alcohol. Of course, we don't know if that's what's happened here, but that's what's suspected to have happened. And alongside the 2 Danish nationals who have died, the American who's died, and the 2 Australians that we know about who've been impacted, we understand that a number of other young travellers have also had to have hospital care following this apparent incident, which took place round about a week ago, we understand. So still trying to get to the bottom of what exactly happened. And of course, the families of those Melbourne girls are desperately worried now at their bedsides in Thailand as they are cared for there.
Human rights lawyers have told the BBC that Turkey is likely in breach of international humanitarian law. A BBC investigation has found that Turkish attacks on infrastructure in northeast Syria have contributed to a water crisis in an already drought-stricken country. Namak Koshnau reports.
The river Khabur was once the main source of water for Hasaka in northeast Syria. 30 years later, extreme drought caused by climate change has dried up the supply.
I can't see a sign of water anywhere. It's a land of 1 million people without water. We are dying here.
When the Khabur River dried up, the people of Hasaka turned to Aluk, where water dug from wells could be piped into the city. The Aluk wells are in an area called Ras Al Ain. In 2019, it was seized by the Turkish army as part of a military incursion in its fight against the PKK, which Turkey considers a terrorist organization. Today there is no water piped in from Aluk to Hasaka. Instead, the city depends on unreliable sources of water brought by tankers driven by people like Ahmed.
These people need more water. The weather is very hot. The phone doesn't stop ringing. People calling. You can see, we can't cope with people's demands.
The only short-term solution to Hasaka's water problem was to guarantee water from Aluk wells again. But in October 2023, Turkey bombed the region's main power station, Suwaidia. Mustafa Ahmed was in charge of the power plant.
The whole operating system of Suwaidia power station, nothing left. The region was in a crisis, without electricity, water, bread or health services.
Electricity from here supplied 900,000 people, and it also once drove the Aluk water station. That's now impossible, and almost 1 million people in Hasaka remain without a direct water supply.
People with dollars in their pocket, they buy water. No one else has access to water. It's unfair for the poor to die of thirst.
Turkey has said its attacks are targeting PKK terrorist facilities. But BBCI has verified that multiple strikes hit 4 key electricity facilities in the region. They powered the grid that supplies electricity to large areas of northeast Syria. This included the largest power station, Suwaidia. An independent UN report found no PKK bases near the station. We put our findings to international human rights lawyers. They told us that Turkey's attacks on water and electricity infrastructure in northeast Syria could constitute a severe violation of international law. The Turkish government told the BBC that it has a right of self-defense against the PKK, that it observes international humanitarian law, and that civilian safety is its priority. Nama Khoshnow, BBC News.
The transition of power in Washington. Some of the people President-elect Donald Trump has already nominated for top jobs are facing new scrutiny. And overnight, Trump confirmed his plans for mass deportations that would include the military. ABC's Jay O'Brien has more.
President-elect Trump confirming on social media he is prepared to start mass deportations of migrants accused of entering the country illegally. In a post on Truth Social, Trump seeming to confirm he will declare a national emergency and use military assets to carry it out.
I mean, the madness, it has to stop. So I think we start, all our energy has to be towards these convicted criminal aliens, and we go from there.
Trump already announced picks to join his administration to help fulfill his promise of mass deportations, including immigration hardliner Stephen Miller and newly named border czar Tom Homan. Some of Trump's other cabinet picks drawing scrutiny from both sides of the aisle. Even some Republicans expressing doubts that former Congressman Matt Gaetz can be confirmed as Attorney General. ABC News previously reporting a woman told the House Ethics Committee conducting investigation into Gaetz that he had sex with her in 2017 when she was 17 years old. Now, the lawyer for another woman telling ABC News, "My client testified to the House Ethics Committee that she witnessed Matt Gaetz having sex with a minor." Gaetz has denied the allegations. Sources tell ABC News the House Ethics Committee was days away from issuing its report on Gaetz before he resigned from Congress. Now, some senators want to see that report before considering Gaetz's nomination.
I believe the Senate should have access to that.
And over the weekend, Trump nominating Chris Wright as Energy Secretary. Wright is a fracking executive who claims concerns about climate change are overblown.
There is no climate crisis, and we're not in the midst of an energy transition either.
At least 3 people nominated for posts in the new Trump administration have ties to the controversial Project 2025. During the campaign, Trump claimed not to be familiar with the conservative playbook. Jay O'Brien, ABC
Hezbollah
News.
chief Naim Qassem, in his latest address, has warned Israel it will respond to IDF's strikes on Beirut. The Lebanese group says it will target Israel's Tel Aviv. Hezbollah chief says the Lebanese group will not accept truce with Israel that violates Lebanon's sovereignty. The Lebanese group also says Israel cannot impose its conditions on Hezbollah.
لكن ليكن معلوما تفاوضنا تحت سقفين.
Let it be known that we are negotiating under two terms. First, a complete and comprehensive cessation of aggression. Second, the preservation of Lebanese sovereignty. This means the Israeli enemy has no right to violate, kill, or enter at will under various pretexts. Lebanon must be protected.
أن يكون لبنان مصانا.
Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar said any ceasefire deal with Lebanon must ensure Israel has the freedom to act against the Hezbollah group. Israel has conveyed its demands to foreign ambassadors ahead of U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein's expected arrival in Israel to discuss a truce. As the war between the Israeli forces and Hezbollah group continues, the Lebanese have voiced skepticism over the U.S. envoy's visit to the Lebanese capital Beirut.
We have tried what happened yesterday many times before, but we're optimistic because Speaker Berry is saying that we've put everything into it and the ball is now with the Americans and the Israelis. If the Americans have intention towards Lebanon that things go well and things will be solved, then be it. But if the Americans don't have the intentions, at the end you can't trust the Americans. They say one thing to you and do another.
Meanwhile, constant blasts were heard in the southern Lebanese village of Qiam, where Israel and Lebanon's Iran-backed Hezbollah are exchanging fire. Smoke rose from the rubble in Lebanon's Nabatea as emergency workers searched for trapped victims in debris of heavily damaged buildings. Members of the Lebanese intelligence unit inspected the site of an Israeli strike in southern Lebanon's Sarafand that hit an army post. Lebanese military says the strike claimed lives of 3 soldiers from the army. Hezbollah said it fired guided missiles at Israeli forces as they attempted to evacuate wounded soldiers in southern Lebanon. The pro-Iranian group, in a statement, said it it injured Israeli soldiers in a missile attack in the border town of Markaba before firing a second one at an infantry unit that came to remove the wounded. Hezbollah said it then targeted with another guided missile a third infantry unit that came to try to recover the dead and wounded. The Israeli army says 2 reservist soldiers were killed and 3 others were wounded. IDF has also accused Hezbollah militant group of firing on 2 United Nations peacekeeping bases in Lebanon. Syria is also caught up in the middle of Israel and Hezbollah's war. The latest, the Syrian Defense Ministry says 36 people were killed and over 50 others were wounded in Israeli airstrikes in the city of Palmyra.
Well, the Biden administration is also issuing a warning to Turkey following reports that it's hosting Hamas leadership. As Alex Hogan reports, it comes as fighting ramps up in southern Lebanon, with Israel launching more airstrikes.
As the fighting grinds on in Gaza, the Biden administration is warning Turkey against hosting Hamas leadership, saying American allies should not be harboring members of a terrorist organization. It comes after several senior officials reportedly left Qatar for Turkey last week after Doha suspended its efforts to mediate a Gaza ceasefire. Turkey has not denied Hamas leaders are in the country, but officials say they have no plans to open an office for them.
A number of these individuals are under U.S. indictment, have been under U.S. indictment for some time, and we believe that they should be turned over to the United States.
Meanwhile, the White House is ramping up diplomatic efforts in Lebanon, sending Special Envoy Amos Hochstein to Beirut on Tuesday for ceasefire talks, and he suggested the fighting could come to an end soon.
I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
As talks continue, Israel is stepping up its airstrikes on Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Monday night, an explosion rocked central Beirut, killing at least 5 people and injuring several more. The IDF says multiple people in Tel Aviv were also injured after a missile launched from inside Lebanon was intercepted. As part of a U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal, the Lebanese army would deploy along the border to act as a buffer between Israel and Hezbollah. In London,
the International Criminal Court is issuing arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. The ICC says there are, quote, reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu and Gallant committed war crimes. Meanwhile, search and rescue operations are underway after Israeli airstrikes bombarded the Gaza Strip. ABC News foreign correspondent Marcus Moore has the latest on that. Marcus?
Well, hi, Diane. These are serious charges in that an ICC arrest warrant carries with it legal and political ramifications, but it's highly unlikely that either of these men will be dragged to The Hague to stand trial, as the International Criminal Court has no enforcement ability. It relies on its member states to enforce the warrant. So at the moment, this is really more of a symbolic move than anything, sending the message of how many around the world view what's happening in Gaza and the potential that alleged war crimes have been committed. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office has responded, calling the charges absurd and false, saying that the ICC is biased and discriminatory, and his office said, quote, no anti-Israeli decision will prevent the state of Israel from protecting its citizens. In the meantime, as we watch that develop, we are also seeing the humanitarian situation in Gaza continue to worsen, particularly in the north. Civilians there have been left with no safe place to go. Nearly the entire population of Gaza has been displaced in one way or another. And we've learned from the Gaza Health Ministry that the death toll has surpassed 44,000. The health ministry there does not differentiate between the fighters and civilians, but the agency says a majority of those who've been killed, Diane, have been women and children.
ABC
The wires here as we come on the air at 8 o'clock on the East Coast. Russia launched this early morning missile attack on Ukraine, hitting critical infrastructure in an area called Dnipro, according to Ukraine's Air Force. 8 were launched, Jan, but Ukraine says they were able to destroy 6 of them. This all comes, keep in mind, just 2 days after Russia President Putin signed a revised nuclear doctrine that lowers the threshold for the country to use nuclear weapons. This is new right now at 8 o'clock. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a missile used, quote, matches the speed and altitude of an ICBM. The Kremlin refused to comment on the strike. That is new right now. This all after the U.S. shut down the embassy in Kyiv on Wednesday due to the threat of a Russian air attack. They reopened Wednesday afternoon after Ukraine called that threat Russian, quote, disinformation. Now, Tuesday, Ukraine launched a major escalation by firing American-supplied missiles into Russia. That for the first time since the war broke out after President Biden lifted restrictions on using them to strike inside Russia. We've also learned the White House agreed to give Ukraine more money for weapons, to the tune of $275 million to be exact, including the widely banned and controversial anti-personnel mines.
Later today, the White House will be announcing additional security assistance for Ukraine worth up to $275 million to meet critical battlefield needs, and that will include munitions for rocket systems and artillery, and anti-tank weapons.
And according to a Reuters report now citing 5 sources, Russia's leader Vladimir Putin is now open to discussing a Ukraine ceasefire deal with Donald Trump. However, he would not make any territorial concessions and would insist that Ukraine abandon any ambitions to join NATO. Any new details on this breaking story, we'll bring it to you right here at the Live Desk.